The Warcraft expansion that's finally coming home. Explained. Yeah, I'm excited for this. He's going to talk a little bit about Midnight, I'm guessing, and the revamp of Silvermoon, which I've been calling for a long time. Silvermoon, one of the greatest assets in the game that's completely underutilized. Can't wait to see what it ends up looking like. It's been talked about as not just a revamp, but a complete rebuild. It's going to look something like Suramar when all is said and done in terms of scale. So I'm really, really excited about this. Let's see what Bellular has to say about how things are going to be going forward and the coming home in World of Warcraft.
Dragonflight set the doomsday clock in motion. The war within will hasten its pace, and in Midnight it shall strike. Midnight is the second expansion of Warcraft's World Soul saga, and it's an ambitious one. A conclusion to the light and void narratives that Blizzard have spun since the Burning Crusade. A return of Ashara, reuniting lost elven tribes, and our first modern subcontinent revamp.
It's going to be great. I feel like I'm more excited for Midnight than I am for the War Within. Because of just the storyline is more interesting to me, the elves, all that stuff, Silvermoon in general. I do hope we see the Amani trolls. Maybe they get a revamp in some form, because if you can't talk about the elves and their past without talking about the Amani trolls. They're completely intertwined. So I would love to see, maybe we get playable Amanis, who knows? Or we get to, or their city becomes something that we could actually go to. That'd be really cool. But at Midnight in general, there's a lot of promising stuff coming from this.
Today, that's what we're going to talk about. You're going to learn how we get to this expansion, all the plot threads Blizzard are weaving together, and essentially what it's going to look like. And let me tell you, after marking this piece as done, I am more excited than when I started. So let's begin this video, which took days and days of work across 4 people and was funded by today's sponsor.
MeUndies. Here's the deal. They
I
make
was not
the most
expecting that.
comfortable underwear and loungewear that there is. And given that the
Where's
lovely
the
country
VPN
of
or
Northern Ireland
something?
has not quite figured out about air conditioning
Undies.
yet, and we basically have humid, swampy summers, well, that kind of makes all of their strengths even better. You see, down to the materials, right? They have this micromodal fabric that is breathable, it's quick drying, moisture wicking, and anti-odor, which is obviously
Combat
exactly
swamp
what you
ass.
want for this kind of thing. If you want to check them out, you can go to meundies.com/Bellular, because over there, you'll get 20% off your order
Good
and
for
free
Bellular, he's
shipping.
getting-
So their underwear is top
he's
notch,
getting
but it's
sponsors
also
like this.
fun. I mean, look at how many print options there are here. Now, why do I have beavers? Well, it's because I think beavers are just great wee lads. We've got dinosaurs. If you maybe want to blaze it and get some other funky patterns, you can, or you can
He's
go
going for the beaver. He knows
sort
what
of
he's doing.
standard, and you'll obviously be getting fantastically comfortable underwear. Now, whether you want boxers, briefs, anything like that, they've got it. Even the likes of the ball caddy to allow for additional inventory management. All their gear is super comfy,
Inventory
it's responsibly
management.
sourced from partners that take care of their workers, and if you're not happy with your first pair, they will cover it. These are the most comfy that I've worn. I'm very happy to have them, especially as we come into the summer, and you can hit up meundies.com/Bellular and you can prep your nether regions for the summer with 20% off your first order and free shipping.
Nice.
By the end of the War Within, we will discover a lot more about Azeroth's World Soul. That is what the Coreway and its protectors are all about, the World Soul. But for our purposes today, there are 2 main things with the War Within expansion. One, the light crystal of Hallowfall, and the clash of Illyria and Xal'atath. The crystal first. It has a light state and a void state, one that essentially provides day and night to the denizens of Hallowfall.
Right.
But what is it? Well, in my view, it is some sort of powerful weapon of the light sent down to the world. It changes states from light to void, just as Naru can, though light does seem to be its ideal default.
I feel like it's all but confirmed that there is a Naru inside this thing. We've even gotten the name. What is it? Is it Belladar or something? I forgot. It's got a name much like all the Naru ships have. So the fact that it's a crashed Naru ship, that could certainly be it. But the void shift between the void and the light, that all started when Sargeras put his sword in the planet. That's confirmed. That's part of the lore. So the fact that Naru tend to start shifting between void and light when they are damaged, like that eventually happens over time, or if damage occurs to them, it all makes sense that there's got to be a Naru inside this thing. And that's why these shifts are occurring, is because it was damaged when Sargeras put the tip in the planet, we should say, just the tip.
Those who saw it as a falling star and decided to travel
Moishi?
across the ocean to find and defend it, it is obviously some form of religious item. That's why they defend it. But of course, it didn't just fall. It was evidently aimed. And when we take a look at where it landed, it's obvious. It landed near the Coreway, which is the literal passage to Azeroth's World Soul. In this expansion, if the Nerubians claim it, we'll be in deep trouble. Now, we've seen what happens when light turns to void. It's an immense type of power, and that's why the Nerubians are drawn to it. Obviously, in Xalatath's hand...
Castro, thank you for the sub,
What's up?
man.
It's been a bit.
Sure has. Thank you for the sub, Death Knight of our Scourge. Appreciate that. 8
it
months.
could be something game-changing. This is set up to be the thing that everybody wants to get their hands on, and in a way, it serves as a parallel to Midnight itself, an expansion where everyone wants to get their hands on a light-aligned font of power. Remember that while, yes, the Sunwell was created using a vial of the Well of Eternity's waters, by the end of the Burning Crusade, we saw it purified with the heart of Muru, imbuing it forever with light. And if the War Within's light crystal is something that will echo...
And that's not the last thing we saw. I mean, if you play through the Void Elf quest lines, you've seen that when Illyria goes there, the Void definitely interacts with it, right? Tries to attack it almost. So there's interesting stuff. The Void and the Sunwell certainly have a play. The fact that we're getting a revamped Silvermoon certainly means the Sunwell is going to be relevant in going forward. And I'm sure Xalatath herself has a plan for the Sunwell.
Go forward into what happens with the Sunwell. Well, funnily enough, Season of Discovery Phase 1...
I love this crossover stuff.
Thing. It saw a shadowy figure, likely to be Xalatath, investigating another, albeit far smaller, light crystal that fell to Azeroth. So this then is our first thread. Powerful objects, powerful fonts of the light that our foes wish to claim. And when I look at what they're doing in Season of Discovery, I mean, in the business, we call that foreshadowing. Our second threat concerns their liege defender and her home. Illyria Windrunner is, in fact, the first elf ever named in the canon, and she will be key to Midnight. Her death, be that literal or metaphorical, is prophesied to bring about our end. So here's a brief version of her story. Illyria left Quel'Thalas to fight in humanity's war against the orcs. She then jumped through the dark portal alongside her husband and the Alliance's greatest, and they fought a campaign that ultimately succeeded in defending Azeroth, but they were unable to return home. It ended with the destruction of Draenor, an event that she and her husband Turalyon narrowly avoided by fleeing into a twisting nether tear. Soon, they were rescued by Lothraxion, and that's when
this guy, man, Lothraxion's got to play a role going forward. And I still don't trust him. To be completely honest, I don't trust him at all. I still see him as a Dreadlord. And I feel like Dreadlords have made it a point to infiltrate every corner of the universe. So of course they're going to infiltrate the light. That totally makes sense. And I don't see that his alliance to the Dreadlords, to Sire Denathrius or anything else has changed. I still think he is one of them. And eventually that's going to be revealed to us.
They joined the Army of the Light, a band of light fanatics led by the Prime Naru Zira. Illyria would soon receive visions of the Void and even meet Locust Walker, a Void ethereal who we can assume is independent of the Void Lords. She rejoins our story in Legion.
Sire Denathrius' lore is interesting. Could have been a retcon, or in reality, I mean, they just never really gave the Dreadlords a proper leader. And, you know, they finally decided, well, we got to get one in here, and they put Sire Denathrius as the leader. So I don't know if it's a complete retcon or just a completion of the lore that was really incompleted at the time. Yeah. Ooh, typical Scuss.
And during the Argus campaign, she would actually consume a dark Naru, really taking the Void into the core of her being. The epilogue of the Legion expansion also has a direct connection to the War Within and Midnight. I'm going to explain how. Il'gynoth is a old god-aligned being that teased us, that whispered prophecy. And here's a prime example.
The King of Diamonds has been made a pawn.
Yeah, I think this one's pretty obvious now.
Back in the day, we spent ages wondering if somehow Magni could be corrupted, if something had went wrong. But the answer is far more simple. Magni Bronzebeard, the Speaker of Azeroth, is quite literally just a pawn in the Titan's plan. Because he serves Azeroth. Well, does he serve Azeroth?
I think when we first heard that whisper, we thought Magni was being made a pawn by the Void, and we realized now that the Void was talking about the Titans, really.
Or does he serve the Titan's purposes for Azeroth?
And the fact that Magni can no longer hear Azeroth's whispers, but everybody else is hearing them, is very interesting, and I think a tell that maybe the Titans were playing him. Maybe everything he heard wasn't coming from Azeroth.
Again, thinking about all of the Titan machinery and all of the Titan keepers and watchers and things that he works with. And while not connected to the subject of this video, that is one example of an Il'gynoth prophecy and how it now very much does make sense. Our next whisper, though, is where Illyria comes in. Take a listen to this.
At the hour of her third death, she ushers in our coming.
Interesting.
There have been many theories about this, but
Interesting that he's saying it's about we always thought this was about Sylvanas. That was the go-to for everybody. He's saying Illyria.
in reality, Illyria is the only character who directly told us that she felt like she had died twice before. Once in Draenor, and
yeah.
once again when she absorbed the
Stay a while and
void-twisted
listen line.
Lura on Argus. So a third death for her is not hard to imagine. She is a main character in the next expansion, and she's set in direct opposition to Xal'atath. So, Xal'atath, Illyria, the Crystal. Whatever happens between them will spark the Midnight expansion. But to introduce it completely, we need another, far more recent prophecy, and it is called the Song of the Depths. The Song of the Depths concerns Ashara's
we
return
reviewed
to
this
Azeroth,
on
and to
stream.
understand that, we must examine her last appearance in the story, which was in Ny'alotha. After being freed, Ashara proclaims that she is done, that she is finished with intermediaries.
Third and final death could be. I do see major lore characters dying in the World Soul Saga. I can't imagine that it doesn't happen. I mean, Blizzard literally said they took inspiration for the saga from the the Infinity Saga from the Marvel universe, and we certainly know that major lore characters did die in that saga. It just makes it more more heavy, makes the story bigger, makes it feel more, the threat feel more real. So we're going to see major lore characters die. Whether or not Illyria is going to be one of them, I don't know. Khadgar could be a casualty early on in the Dalaran fight. We still don't know if he survives that, so we'll have to see.
Heralds. And this is clearly referring to her old master,
Right, and we know we're gonna lose,
who
true
had
monarch.
been a ostensibly servant of the Void Lords. Now, after saying that, Ashara disappears through a void portal, and the question was, where did she go?
where is she?
At the time, we speculated she essentially wanted to go one rung up the Void ladder, that she wanted to go from Old God to Void Lord, that she had some sort of insane plan, one fitting her raw power and ego. The thing is, Shadowlands almost told us where, but Dragonflight confirmed it. First, I've got to do a fun fact. The old Shadowlands meta achievement title is Veil Strider, and canonically a veil in Warcraft is the boundary between our reality and a cosmological realm, a bit like with the Shadowlands, or what we call the Emerald Dream. Now, we've long known that these other realms exist, like for years and years and years. I mean, the Void Lords had to be somewhere, right? Now, Shadowlands made this very clear with the introduction of Zereth Umbra. So a veil is a boundary. As an example, the Shadowlands cinematic was called, I believe, Piercing the Veil. They've continually talked about that. So with that understanding in mind, I will now read from A Song of the Depths. Rise, rise, our queen calls to us from beyond the umbral veil. She has transcended the circle of stars and basks in her eternal grandeur. The time we have long awaited is nigh. Even now, the Harbinger gathers the children of the first flesh to reclaim what was lost. They must remember their vows and serve those whom they owe fealty.
The children of the first flesh is the interesting line here that, we're trying to determine who are the children of the first flesh. Not sure if it's ever been confirmed. We do know that Xal'atath is gathering all the Nerubians, right? And there are some who are resisting that, and some who are, remembering their fealty, as it kind of says here, joining them. We've seen those the mural on the wall not too long ago that shows up in the raid, where we see like these old god, minions and stuff, kind of ushering the Nerubians into the mouth of this old god on the piece of art on the wall. Like that seems like some interesting stuff that could be coming into play from this.
Is quite a piece, and that's not all of it, but
Trolls,
we'll start here.
I don't know if I would consider trolls part of that. Children of the first flesh could be us, too, but it would be the ones who received the curse of flesh. I don't think trolls are part of that. The curse of flesh was really dwarves, humans, gnomes, who else? All the ones that went from basically being Titan constructs to what they are today, which is fleshy free
Now
will
remember, this was
thinkers.
revealed to us on the Forbidden Reach. That was just
Yeah,
before
trolls
we
are like
glimpsed
of Azeroth.
Xal'atath
They just
through
evolved.
that portal in Dawn of the Infinite. So, this is a Naga piece, and it is all talking about Queen Ashara. It says that she is beyond the Umbral Veil. Umbral, of course, translates to shadow, and before you think, oh dear, Shadowlands, no. Ashara's
No,
not
please.
there going to Zoval's corpse or some goofy thing that none of us want. Look at this original cosmological chart. You can see void, shadow. Yeah, the naming's a bit funky, but it's void. It also speaks of a harbinger
Right.
gathering the children of the first flesh, so that is quite obviously what Xal'atath had been up to
Correct,
at that
Moish.
time. And of course, it has since been confirmed that Xal'atath is the harbinger of Dementius, who is the only named Void Lord in the Warcraft canon. The song continues, and it later states that these things will come to pass before the Naga Queen returns. The Harbinger speaks of a primal power that seeks the end of order. Such rage can be bent to serve our ends. A hunger lost to the ages will be reclaimed. A dark heart left broken awaits the taking.
Now, what's interesting about these lines is these are actually the same lines that were kind of spoken by Eridicron, right? He talked about the never-ending hunger and how he's not really interested in working side by side with Xal'atath to achieve her goals, right? Viranoth called him out on it. She was like, "How can you trust her? You trust the void?" And he says, "I trust its hunger." Remember that line? And remember, his goal is to bait the Titans out, and he wants to, supposedly, once he gets them here, he thinks he knows how to kill them. So that's his whole goal. He talks about a couple of these things, and these lines are coming from the Naga. They're not coming from him, but he does recite some of the same stuff. Very interesting.
Lost to the ages will be reclaimed.
Keeping
A dark
enemies
heart
close, yeah.
left broken awaits the taking. Okay. We've seen each of these in Dragonflight. Xal'atath's alliance with Eridicron, the
There you go.
claiming of
I didn't pre-watch
Galakron's
this shit. I just
essence
know my
into
lore.
a relic named Dark Heart, and indeed, patch 10.2.7 is titled Dark Heart. There is, however, one
What?
final thing the prophecy states will happen before Ashara returns, so let us return to the song. When these things come to pass, the Harbinger will fulfill the final prophecy and complete the awakening. Only then shall our queen return to reign over sea and sky and earth. We must make ready. And there we
So if I had to say when's the awakening happening, or when's this is probably happening at midnight, which is why everyone believes this is when Azara comes back. She comes back in the midnight expansion. Whose side she on? She's on her own side. People have talked about her having like a redemption arc. I don't think that's going to happen. She is utterly selfish, entitled. She's always been into herself and about herself. So when she comes back, that's what she's going to do. She's still going to be about herself, but maybe her, whatever she's doing can be used to help us. That's the only thing that I can see happening in terms of her getting a redemption. It's not because she wants to be redeemed. It's because maybe we are aligned on the same side of things towards the end.
for sea and sky and earth. We must
When we take
make
our L,
ready.
yes,
There
exactly.
we have
Midnight,
it. The
we're taking the
awakening.
L for sure.
I believe this is the core event of the War Within. Be it Azeroth, Dementius, or something totally different, I think when Xal'atath completes this goal, Midnight will begin, and when it
Yeah.
begins, Ashara will return.
Right.
And knowing Ashara, she won't be returning to help. It will be to claim what she has always believed she is entitled to, Azeroth. Us, Ashara, the Light, the Void, they all want to claim Azeroth, and it's clear that the Sunwell will help them do it. And with that, it's time to talk about the lands of Quel'Thalas and the sorts of things that will happen in the Midnight expansion. I do have one quick tidbit, though. The Dragonflight Season 4 raid affixes are titled Awakened.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the Awakening, Awakened. I think we can
yeah.
all see the direction
I
things are
see.
going.
I never really thought about it.
If the patch cycle of World of Warcraft keeps up its blistering pace, then each expansion in the saga will bring us a capital city, 4 launch zones, and 2 patch zones. And when thinking about a revamped Quel'Thalas in the mold of the modern
It's
game,
going to be
I think
cross-faction.
it's rather clear
It's going to be cross-faction. I've already said this multiple times. If you're uniting the elves are on both factions. They're both sides, right? You can't have a uniting of the elves if you're not going to have a uniting of the factions. Now, whether people are going to be pissed off about that or not, I have no idea. But it's certainly going to be something that is going to be used as the hub. I've talked about this before. It's an unbelievable looking city, beautiful city. And if they're going to put this much work into it, there is no way they're just going to leave it as a horde capital city. It's going to be a cross-faction city, and it's going to be the hub of Midnight.
what we'll get. The Isle of Quel'Danas, Eversong,
be like a Dalaran,
Ghostlands, and the Amani Troll lands, all greatly expanded. And when you go to not their in-game portrayal, but their canon, what they're like in the lore, it gets exciting. To give you a sense of scale, let's look at a modern depiction of Quel'Danas. In Chronicle, the Sunwell Isle is
awesome.
a glittering city rising from the sea. In-game, it's a decently small raid.
Yeah.
Now take a look at its counterpart, the Nightwell. It is the pinnacle of Nighthold with aqueducts sending
I
energy.
freaking loved Suramar. Suramar is the most proper city-feeling city in the game, if that makes any sense. The amount of NPCs walking around, the different areas, it feels lived in. It's an unbelievably well-made city. It's one of the best and most fun questing hubs I've ever done in the game, and I'm not like a big, world quest guy. I don't really like doing that shit that much, but I just loved being in Suramar. What a great city.
Throughout the city.
They make it something like this, it's
going
to be
the same,
unbelievable.
but it uses the rune stones in Eversong to channel its energy, and those will be relevant. But the point is here, this is a chance to render Quel'Danas with the layers of Borealis, the energy of Suramar, a scale that actually matches its importance. And of course, with the game's modern movement mechanics, a proper opportunity to play with verticality or to delve underground to discover the arcane machinery that maintains the Sunwell. But let's return to those runestones. You may not have heard of them, but trust me, they're a hanging plot thread, and they almost certainly will play a major role in the Midnight expansion.
Oh, yeah.
You see, the Old Horde destroyed many of them, and the Scourge destroyed many more. Only a few remain. They were built essentially to shield Quel'Thalas's energy from interdimensional forces, which, in other words, essentially means the Legion. The point there being that whenever the Kaldori Society went just a little bit crazy when using the Well of Eternity's magics, it basically just was a big magical beacon, telling the Legion, hey, come here, there's a lot of power. So they built these runes to essentially prevent that from happening again. This time round, of course, it isn't the Legion, it is Void. Void wants to claim the Sunwell, it wants to turn it purple.
Yep.
So a question is, can we rebuild this network? Will the champions of the Void Invasion be trying to destroy these seals? I think it's something that's going to happen. Are the Ghostlands once again a land of eternal springtime? I mean, it would be unfortunate to see that legacy completely die. I would rather see a patchwork of perhaps Forsaken cleansing out the Scourge, Windrunner Tower reclaimed by maybe Illyria, if
That'd
she
be cool.
survives the war within, maybe the Void Elves having more of a home there. Enough grassroots stories exist here to let Quel'Thalas breathe without everything being consumed with a massive Void War. One of those plot points is a resurgent Amani Empire. Their village, Torwatha, has huge gates leading to the east.
I did not pre-watch this. I already told you guys. I swear to God, I've not pre-watched this video. But it's just logical that the Amani Empire cannot be just glazed over. If you're going to talk about ancient, elves and the reuniting of the elves, this shit has to come up. Now, my hope is that we get to go back to this place and it's actually a city again. And we get to see the Amani trolls. Maybe they become an allied race of some sort, but just go, man. It'd be amazing. I like the Amani trolls. I think they have a cool history. I really hope we get to do this.
These were replaced in the Cataclysm, but that's evidence that the Amani lands were intended to be much bigger than they ever were in the game. Currently, they are a handful of huts in the Ghostlands, but in the game's lore, it's a vast forest that covers half of Quel'Thalas.
Right.
A tangle of wood and temple that the High Elves were never able to fully conquer.
Yeah, the High Elves had to work with the humans to fight back against these guys. The Amani trolls were no pushovers. Now, we all know about the Zandalari, and they were like this great troll empire. And they were supposedly the strongest troll empire that ever existed, but the Amani are probably second to them. Definitely. I mean, they are tough. They had their encampment, and they fought against the elves for a long time with a lot of success.
Up until the Amani went all Drakari and started sacrificing their gods to fight Blood Elves, they were still a major and powerful empire. They're
Alliance
likely
trolls,
still out there,
maybe.
And that brings up a question.
Or cross-faction, kind of like the dwarves, the Stony Boy dwarves that we're getting. So they're giving dwarves to the Horde and the Alliance. They could do a troll cross-faction. I mean, remember, some of the Amani trolls, they spit on the Horde, so maybe they don't want to be Horde.
Within the Midnight expansion. Well, they, as some people have suggested, be an allied race. In the Battle for Azeroth expansion, the Amani and Zuldazar despised the Horde, but they still did serve the Zandalari. Or will they take the dark path of Hex Lord Malakras and accept whatever bargain is offered by the Void, if taking that bargain means they get their lands back and they end the elves, one of their historical allies? There's more than that, though. Buried underneath Zoloman is the corpse of the Cathaxi general Cathix. He helped slay Tyr and was later awakened by Xal'atath to fight a war against the trolls. And this isn't just any war. I'm not going to go into it, but it was of a pretty insane scale. And it is, in fact, that war that led to the Akir spreading across the world, and that led to the rise of the Nerubians.
Yes, the Nerubians and the Calaxi, or whatever the hell they're called in Pandaria. All that came from this.
Of course, we will deal with in the War Within. So you can see how a lot of these things are surprisingly quite well connected.
They're all connected, yep.
Now you can go and look at our Xal'atath video to see how this Cathaxi was key to Xal'atath's ancient plans. So who knows? Maybe she once again could awaken this ally, and maybe in doing that, the Imani could be bent to serve her
Children
will.
of the First
But
Flesh.
let's return to the main event, the Void Invasion. How is it going to happen? Are the Void Elves the lost elven tribe that were talked about by Blizzard, or is that something else? I mean, they were banished from Quel'Thalas by the Silvermoon Magi because any tampering with the Void around the Sunwell could have dire consequences. They were hardcore about that, and does that suggest the Magisters of Quel'Thalas know something? As an example, the Naru Muur used to be drained of light to power the Blood Knights. That's how the Horde were able to be paladins in the Burning Crusade.
Yeah,
but by the end of the Burning
paladin
Crusade, Muur was defeated, and its core essentially was used to cleanse the Sunwell, and that means that the Blood Elf Paladins can now properly use the light. But the thing is, the core of a Naru can turn void. That is what Illyria herself consumed in Argus. So, what happens if the Sunwell turns? Could it end up being the Void's gateway? Or perhaps the invasion may come from a different group, the Ethereals. Do you remember the Shadow Scrolled coin that you found in your adventure journal at the start of Dragonflight?
Yeah.
That was clearly Blizzard playing with us.
I think I sold it for 100 gold. I do think I took the 100 gold.
Samiccus Walker, mentor of Illyria, is not the only Void Ethereal of interest. There's also Shadreen, who has been following us for years now, examining how we dress, how we fight, and how we adventure. And it wasn't just out of her own interest. She was gathering information for a mysterious master. Now, as Locust Walker is the only known independent Void Ethereal, I think it's likely that Shadreen's master is tangled up with the Void Lord's plans for Azeroth.
I would say so.
That's not the only Ethereals. We met a great many Void Ethereals with all of their spaceships and their portals during our campaign on Argus. Those guys are still out there. And that brings me to what
There's also an Ethereal in the new raid that we're going to be going to in the War Within, the first raid, and supposedly that Ethereal is not necessarily aligned with the Void or anything. That Ethereal was actually sent to assassinate the leader of the Nerubians, whatever her name is, that queen that we fight is the final boss in the raid. So why we get entangled with that assassin? Because technically we're on the same side. We are both trying to kill the queen, but we supposedly kill this assassin. Now, what the storyline is there, why we kill her, we have no idea yet, or if we even killed him. We don't know the fight. I mean, we do have seen raid testing, but why the storylines in terms of what's happening there, we don't know them yet. But there is an Ethereal in the raid who's trying to kill the queen. We'll find out more about what's going on. Thanks for the spoilers, goddamn rat. No, it's not a spoiler. It's literally her boss description. It's in the journal. It's not a big deal because we don't know the real story behind them yet. We just know that they're there to kill her. They're an assassin.
I think may be a patch zone of this expansion. Okay, so the Void Lord Dimensius is known as Xal'atath's patron, and he is also the reason why the Ethereals now wander the cosmos without a home. It's because their planet, Koresh, became void and arcane ravaged, a wasteland after Dimensius physically manifested there.
Right.
Now, Dimensius returned to our lore recently with the Void.
That would be a really cool thing. I do hope we get to see the ethereal homeworld, like go back in time somehow and see it before it wasn't destroyed. It would be amazing.
Song's staff, the Staff of Xal'atath, which does point to his personal involvement with the Harbinger. So all of this lore, I think, is circling around a trip to Koresh.
Yes,
And in true
Koresh.
Champion of Azeroth
That's the
style,
name of
this
the
would be a
planet.
chance to bring the fight back to the Void. Argus was an incredible patch experience, so imagine if we went to Koresh. the
So
true
cool.
home of the Ethereals.
Be so cool.
That would be absolutely.
But I hope we don't just go there and see a destroyed world. We could do that, but I would even I would like it more to go back in time and see it before it was destroyed. And if we saw it before it was destroyed, we would technically see what the ethereals actually looked like. Because their current form is just what they are because of the destruction that happened. Right? They became this like ethereal cloud. They used the bandages to keep themselves together, but that's not what they always were. They were something else prior to this new form that they have. I would love to see what they used to look like.
Incredible. But it would be an excursion.
David
True war
Koresh,
would be
yes.
fought for Azeroth.
What's up, Mikey?
So let's get to that. When talking about this expansion, Chris Metzen said that this is the ultimate clash between light and dark.
Right.
So where does the light fit in? All the big hitter characters we've talked about are void aligned so far, so let's talk about the light. The light really has taken a back seat since the Legion expansion. Even Anduin has somewhat set it aside. There's Turalyon,
Right.
who's the regent of Stormwind, but I think any chance of him shaking the boat was settled in Dragonflight. Without a faction conflict, he's just, being the caretaker of the throne.
Yeah, he's
Velen
actually
is still
doing a
about,
decent
but
job.
He's from Argus, and this is about our world soul. I'm sure he'll help a lot, but maybe there's going to be someone a little closer to things. I think that means we have to look at the war within. Whatever happens in Hallowfall with that light crystal will have huge consequences for
gonna
the
be
history
important.
of the light on Azeroth. You see, Maraldar, the capital of the Arathi, is named after the woman who was visited by an unknown Naru and taught about the light.
Yeah, this light, the holy flame, as Tundra you called it there, that's going to be the one thing that I'm interested to see. We were just talking about what Turelion's reaction is to this, because Turelion is very much, a zealot light worshiper, right? He loves the light, everything about it. It's entwined in his own DNA. That's why he's lived so long. And now we're going to get this holy light, this holy flame light from these Zarathi, and it seems like a different form of light. Is he going to trust it? Is he going to be okay with it? If Anduin learns how to use it, is he going to think Anduin's wrong for using this different light? Who knows how that's going to all play out? I think there is going to be some storylines there to be had. Play of action today, Kale Sauce. We're going to finish out the raid.
Some of her
Maybe do some
followers
Mythic
ended
Plus.
up going to Hallowfall, called to crusade by the same crystalline figures that taught
Sus holy light.
Eldar the light. So who is that Naru? So far, we essentially are talking about an unknown group of Naru who have been guiding the destiny of humanity for thousands of years. What's going on with them? I don't know, but they certainly would seem to be the same group that launched the Hallowfall crystal at Azeroth. And again, I ask, what was the point of that crystal? It was obviously aimed at the World Soul. And this is where I want to bring the Sunwell back into things. So the Sunwell was created by Dathramir Sunstrider when he poured a vial of water taken from the Well of Eternity before its destruction in there, right? Now,
Right.
this essentially at the time was being portrayed as a massive font of arcane energy. It's now essentially like world soul energy, you could sort of say, right? It's like directly from Azeroth. Now, this is where things get interesting. When Yasharj was pulled from the planet, the resulting wound basically damaged the world soul, and that made it hemorrhage Azerite until the Titans shaped the wound into the ordered, sort of arcane energy Well of Eternity.
Titans ordering
Now, going
things,
back
of
to the
course.
Sunwell, okay, the thing that made it so powerful was that spark from the Well of Eternity, and that is a spark from our world soul, right? Now, because the light has been put into the well by the Naru, as of the end of the Burning Crusade, in a way that means it's now ripe to be corrupted by the Void. And if
Right.
that happens, the Void will control a portion of the world soul's power. When we think about the cleansing of the Sunwell, right, those events that happened at the end of the Burning Crusade, that was clearly of rather great religious importance, right? But at the end of the day, that religion, the Naru are happy to be worshipped. They are happy to
Sure.
be seen as holy beings because that means that us, well, we kind of do things that they
Yeah, I mean, Zira loved Turelion, man. He was like I said, a big time worshiper. She was all about it. She loved that
want.
stuff.
So, yes, we gave them an in with something essentially that was powered by Azeroth's sort of world soul, right? They flung their crystal at the world soul. And every time, as Alatath said, she sees the Naru as long-lost brethren. So at every time that the light would try to gain purchase in Azeroth, that is also an opportunity for the Void to flip it to their favor.
Interesting.
And while those two essentially battle it out, well, we're going to be stuck in the middle. And ultimately, this is all part of the plan.
True.
Iridikron wants to force the Titans back.
Yes.
He wants them to return. And I think that if the Void gets further than any other force, that will force their hand.
That's
Pretty
what he wants.
exciting.
He's
And
helping. He's helping Xal'atath to further her goals because he knows that if Xal'atath does what she wants to do, the Titans are going to have to come and try to stop her. And when they show up, he plans on face punching them.
Perhaps we'll learn whatever the fuck was going on with that goddamn Sarkareth boss room, with its chains, with its like big circles everywhere, and I mean, come on,
Let's all be honest. The Sarkareth boss room was cooler than Sarkareth. Sarkareth was a bitch ass boss. Nothing cool about him.
what was going on? I don't know, but if you want another video to watch, check out this. This video is basically Xal'atath, her like entire story. I think it would be a perfect complement to this. So I will see you over there. Thanks to you for watching. Thanks to our sponsor for funding today's episode. Go enjoy Xal'atath. Take care.
Nice. Yeah, great video from Bellular here. There's a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. It's the most interesting thing I would say is the reworks of the elves, the storyline of where it's going to go, how things are going to be revamped, and then, of course, what that all means for the Void and Xal'atath and everything going forward, the Sunwell lore. All that shit's going to play out. We'll have to see how it does. Like I said, Midnight's lore, certainly more interesting to me than the War Within, and that's why I'm really more excited for that expansion than this one. But hey, hopefully both are going to be great. That's the plan, I'm sure.